Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to day 4 of our our participation in National Crime Victims Week. You've heard us talk about a few things this week. We've talked about, let me pull up this schedule. Y'all have stuck with us. On Sunday, we kicked off with a tribute to the medical crime victims that were submitted for the reading of the names. I want to remind everybody that we are going to do a closing ceremony and read those names again. And this time there'll be more names because more are coming in every single day. And so there's still time to get your loved one in. You go to Betrayal Project USA and you submit. It's very easy. Name, date of death, state, your information, and a photograph. And they'll go on our memorial wall. We have a memorial wall for medical crime victims. Maybe someday we'll have an actual memorial, a physical memorial somewhere. That is a goal of ours, of Heidi Bond's. No, it's a goal of ours. And so go ahead and submit your name, the name of your loved one, to that memorial wall, and it'll be on our reading of the names this coming Sunday. And so just want to remind you that on Monday we heard from Leslie Batts, who did a great presentation on reporting medical crimes and your rights, your voice, your action, who was who in the government zoo, and we talked about immunity. We talked about the federal laws and why it's important to report. And a reminder as you're listening today about the crimes committed in hospice that that we're not. It's not your job to prove a crime. We're trying to prove a pattern. That's why it's important to report it to the federal government. Not that we think every single case will be prosecuted or investigated, but patterns require investigation. And we will, if our goal is 10,000 people reporting, if we can get that, it will certainly prove a pattern. We also have this out there. This is the one pager. We have that out there. It's on our website and everywhere on our social media. So, or take a screenshot of it right now. These are the types of things you can report. This goes across the board this week, no matter what medical crime was committed against your family. Yesterday, we talked about with Laura Bartlett and Dr. Margaret Aranda. It was a great presentation on what happened beyond the ER door, the things that nobody wants to talk about, in hospitals, evidence-based versus incentive-based care. You're going to hear some of that today with hospice too. A lot of incentive-based and violations of standard of care and those types of things, and fraud. That does seem to be the one thing that they are itching to prosecute these days is fraud. We're going to hear about that when it comes to hospice. And so today we are going to hear from Marcia Joyner and Terry Wirgen about the basically hospice homicide. She's We're going to pull up a presentation here shortly. I also do want to remind everyone to go out and sign the proclamation. There's a little scan. It's also on our website. Our website, betrayalprojectusa.org. I almost forgot our own website. There it is. It's under the get involved, take action section of our website. So you go get involved, take action. Those are our calls to action that we have there. And this proclamation is there for you to sign. Our goal, we should be quite honestly getting hundreds of thousands of signatures. This proclamation is we're going to be asking for victims of medical crimes to be declared a victim group of crime. because we have noticed we are not getting justice in the courts, and that's because people don't believe us. And medical crime victims happen to be the largest group of crime victims in the United States. There's millions of us, millions and millions and millions of us. So please go and sign that. If you have a family member or you're just a supporter, anybody can sign it. Go out there and sign it. We'd appreciate your support. So Marsha, let's start with you. If you want to give people kind of a introduction of you, and then we'll go to Terry.
Sure. So, and I'll make mine brief because tonight we want to talk mostly, about what hospice is doing. But I got involved in 2017 after my mother was cruelly murdered by hospice. And it'll be a repeated theme that you hear tonight. The people were not dying. We're not talking about people that are on the last week of their life and that they've already started the dying process. We are talking about people who are living with their illness, with their disease, and they're nowhere near dying when this happens to them. And that's what happened to my mom. She was tricked into going into respite care for my dad to get some rest because he was the hospice chaplain 15 years earlier, and the people liked him. They were friends with him, and they were looking at my mom as she was dragging my dad down. So they took them to the hospice facility, put him in a room across from her, and they immediately started drugging her. And after that, she died in 10 days, which I'll go a little bit more into that. But that's when I started. I met Marty Oakley, that's my mom. I met Marty Oakley of TS Radio Network, and I was on her program in 2018. And then she asked me if I would come back and do podcasts because there were so many victims in hospice, and it was something nobody was talking about. So I did that for 7 years, and then she passed away, God rest her soul. And Kaz Scaife took up that doing podcast and getting more involved with that to continue Marty's legacy. So doing that, I also joined Liz Eisner's Facebook group, Murdered by Hospice. I was number 140 member on that. We are 7,200 people now. And I had the podcast allowing people to come on, talk about their stories, and professionals to come on. And then in 2024, I wrote a book called Betrayed by Hospice and Healthcare, Stories from the Deathbed. And I had 34 people, their stories put in there, and additional information about drugs and resources. And tonight I have one of those people with me, Terry Wargen, and her husband, John, was one of the victims that was murdered. And she and I have become good friends over the past 8 years. This is her husband. And, we hear the same type stories over and over of what happened in hospice. So, Terry, I appreciate you coming on tonight with me to also talk about what you know about hospice and what happened to John. So, I'd like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. You're on mute.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. I thought I'd cut off. I'm Terry Wargen, and my husband was also killed by hospice a few months before Marcia's mother in February of 2017. I had no experience in growing up with my family. I was lucky enough to have all four of my grandparents when I was an adult. And they passed away peacefully without hospice. So I had no experience with it at all. And I heard there was a hospice and that's where people go to die. And that's all I knew about it. So John, in the summer of 2016, was diagnosed with a gallstone. Very simple gallstone. He was an active, productive member of society. He was 78, but still working full time. Very active in the community. He was elected to the Board of Assessors. He was an elected member of the town committee. He volunteered 2 days a week at the Wildlife Center. So this was just what we thought was a simple gallstone. And in the process of diagnosing this gallstone, the primary care doctor also noticed that he had a high calcium count. So he called John and he wanted John to go to the emergency room. And I won't go into all the details of what happened at that point, but the long and short of the story was because of the hospital's negligent care, he was hospitalized 3 times in less than 30 days. And I found out after the fact, that's a red flag for hospice. Hospitals are being fined for too many readmissions. And our hospital has been fined every year since it started back in the beginning of Obamacare. So he was also diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is an unusual cancer. It's not aggressive, which I didn't know at the time. The average patient lives 10 years. The longest patient lives 33 years. For John, his 10 years from diagnosis would be this coming summer. So I look every day and think if I had known then about hospice what I know now, he very likely could still be alive today. And I think that's the hardest thing to deal with. But during the course of being treated for hospice, there were many, or for hospice for the multiple myeloma, there were several mistakes made. And one was an overdose of Lasix and an overdose of his cancer drug. And that spiraled him out of control into dehydration. And we went to the doctor for that to be treated, and they ended up giving him more Lasix, not once, but twice. So he finally ended up in February in the emergency room for dehydration. My 911 call says dehydration. It really had nothing to do with his multiple myeloma other than the overdose of the chemo drug. But because it was his fourth visit, when he went through those emergency doors that morning, he was flagged for hospice care without our knowledge or consent, which again is against the law because there was no informed consent. No one discussed anything with John. He had no say in his treatment or withholding of treatment, and he had no say in his own death. But I didn't know he was comfort measures only, nor did he until after he was gone. So he went in on a Saturday morning. This was a 5-day interval from start to finish. They gave him 2 doses of Lasix for no reason, even though they had entered into the record that he was dehydrated. But they had made the decision already before they admitted him that he was going to die. They withheld water. They withheld food. And I think that the withholding of water bothers me more than anything. For the last 5 days of his life, they would not give him an ice chip, a drink of water, nothing, for no reason at all other than to kill him. They stopped his daily drugs, which I didn't know. It never occurred to me to say, are you giving him his medication? It never occurred to me that medical staff would lie to us or that they would intentionally kill a patient. So they came and they told us that he had double pneumonia, which was a lie. And they made up a diagnosis, which he supposedly had 4 kinds of pneumonia. He had sepsis. He was confused, and they depicted him as a senile, bedridden old man who had so many things wrong with him that you would expect him to die. The first night, they came in the middle of the night and started injecting him with Ativan, which I didn't know what it was. I didn't know. I asked what it was, but I didn't know what it did. And when he became unconscious, it never occurred to me they were intentionally making him unconscious. I just thought he was so sick that he was unconscious. I know now that was their goal, was to make him unconscious. They also, even though he never had pain, anxiety, or agitation, once they made him unconscious, they started drugging him with fentanyl and morphine and oxycodone. And he lived through that for 4 days. And I questioned it. Of course, over a weekend, you can't talk to anybody. So on Monday morning, I finally got in touch with my primary care doctor, and I was telling him the drugs, and I had stopped the drugs. And after that, John woke up. He was completely coherent. He knew who he was, where he was, who I was. His kids came in. He actually told the nurse he had a headache. And I thought, after all those drugs, I'm sure he did have a headache. And the attending hospitalist, who never laid eyes on John, he never got closer to John than the door of his room, came and told us he had developed leukemia and had 2 or 3 days to live. And so that was a lie. They never even did any tests for leukemia. But John and I talked about it. I said I wanted John sent up to Boston to Mass General, and they refused. They never discussed hospice with us. The word hospice was never said. End of life care was never discussed. They made all the decisions. His healthcare proxy was never invoked, but the doctors acted as his healthcare proxy and decided that he was going to die. So John and I talked about it. After they refused to send him up to Boston, we decided to go home, and we could go to Boston ourselves, call the primary care. So I had stopped all the drugs. His kids were with him. I told the nurse, just do what you have to do to get him out of there. So she came in with a clipboard, and there were things that she had me sign, which again, I had no legal right to sign. But one was for oxygen and one was for a hospital bed. And tucked in there was the paperwork for hospice. And I signed it. I didn't know I was signing it, but I signed it. And after John was gone and I discovered all these things, I did call the administrator from hospice and said, how can you have someone sign the paperwork for hospice when they have no legal authority to do so? And she actually said to me, oh, we do that all the time. So she came.
So that's really crazy. So, like, I mean, you would think something like DNRs and hospice orders that they would have to go through step by step. Like, what about the 8 wishes or whatever that is, and the all of the things that you would think that they would need to go line by line by line. Oh my gosh.
They didn't. And they did change them from full code to DNR, which we didn't know. But they came in at 1:00. Was being delivered. And I felt comfortable leaving him. That was the only time that I left him. I stayed with him 24/7. But his kids were there, and he was awake. He was coherent. He was talking. I wish now I'd put him in a wheelchair and brought him home myself, but I didn't. I left at 2:03. I'm sorry. And I know that because I was talking to friends in North Carolina. And I hung up the phone because I was getting on the elevator. So at 2:03, I left the floor. At 2:06, they started drugging him again with Ativan and fentanyl against my instructions. So by the time he arrived home, they had given him 5 more doses, and he arrived home drugged unconscious. It's a VNA nurse. That's how the chief medical officer, I had correspondence with him, and he didn't refer to her as a hospice nurse. He referred to her as a VNA nurse. So he arrived home unconscious, and she convinced me to sit and put Ativan and now oxycodone in his mouth. every hour until he stopped breathing at 4 o'clock the next day.
And we're going to talk about that because exactly what she is saying is
There,
what
I'm still there.
happens
So
in
I've
home.
learned a lot about hospice, obviously, since then. It took me a long time to even find out that he was on hospice care. But certainly the protocols were broken and they had everything in place. And I'm sure they've done it to hundreds and hundreds of other people.
Well, let's go into the.
And we know that we have saved lives by telling our stories. I said the last interview I did actually with Vindog. I said to him that doing this is not going to bring Marcia's mother back, and it's not going to bring Liz's husband back, and it's not going to bring my husband back. But if we can save lives, then it's worth it. So that's basically John's story. And he's missed seeing his grandchildren grow up and get married. And our first great-grandchild was born, is now 3 years old, and she's named for him. And I live with it every single day. I wonder how many years of life was stolen from him and from our family.
Yeah. Can you hear us?
I'll turn it back to you, Marcia, I guess.
Okay. I'm not sure that she can hear us.
Yeah, you might want to text her.
And we can't see her.
Yeah, she's having a little technical glitch there.
I don't know that she's gonna.
All right. Just text her and tell her she needs to.
I'm going to tell her to come back in.
Yeah, go out, go in. That's the technical fix for everything. Unplug it and plug it back in. Go out,
turn
go
the light and turn it back on.
Yeah. That's the technical. Doesn't matter what's broken.
Yeah, hopefully she gets my message. So one of the things that I wanted to say before I start this, after we did the reading on Sunday of all of the victims, the crime victims and their pictures, my sister Sheila said to me, well, the least you could do is smile. And I went back and looked at the video of everybody. And of course, I texted her and I said, if you look at it, nobody's smiling, because it isn't a smiling type conversation. It's very solemn. And we were all very sad reading the names. And I've often thought when I'm doing podcasts that I would like to be doing one about gardening or my puppies or cooking or painting, anything other than what we are discussing, which is the murder of our loved ones. So that's why I am capable of smiling, but that's why I don't smile during these, because it's a sad story.
Yeah. I can vouch for the fact that Marcia Joyner is capable of smiling and even sometimes laughing, because she's laughed at some of my jokes even.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It was very sobering. Here was the thing that was the most sobering, I think, of reading those names and having those names come in for the wall and the tribute, was that we've been in this fight for 5 years now. Well, I have. You've been much longer. And it was, there were quite a few people who didn't even know any of our groups existed before we banded together. Like they didn't know there were people out there that would believe them, that their loved one was killed in hospice or killed by the protocols or the shots or any type of medical crime. And so the fact that there were people who reached out, put their loved one on the wall and on the tribute, and had been struggling and living with this alone,
right,
was sobering. The other thing that was very sobering was that wall full of people. Those people, their families never stopped fighting for them. they're not forgotten. It is, they want justice, and they've been fighting for years for justice, and they're not giving up. They're not giving up to get uh justice. And so I that struck me as, I say those are the most loved people in America. So, but let's go on to your all right, I've got two Terrys. So,
Yeah, she's having, she said she's got a difficulty time hearing, and she went out and hopefully is coming back in.
I'm back
okay.
now.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Awesome.
Okay, that's good. See,
I
I
can.
told you.
Okay.
You're rubber banding a little bit when you talk, but it I think you're probably having a network issue, and it may be, sometimes if you turn off your camera, it's okay. We know there's a real person and you're not AI, but sometimes when it starts to rubber band like that, if you turn off your camera, it saves bandwidth, because the camera can sometimes be a bit of a hog. So when you start to, that might help you for
Okay.
now. Yeah, and just while you get through the rough spot. See, Matt said I can vouch for Marsha being able to laugh. So there you have it. There you have it. It's
Yeah.
proven beyond a
Right.
shadow of a doubt. That's right, Gary. We are here to save lives. Gary does a lot to get justice for his brother Thomas. All right.
Right.
Let's dive into, because you've got a lot of information that you need to cover.
Okay.
You're always using your key phrase, knowledge is power, because it absolutely is. I'm going to make this bigger. It's going to make us disappear for a little bit, but I'm sure people would like to read the slides and not look at our faces. So you go ahead, and we'll start with the history.
Okay. So, not just to touch base on this, that Dame Cicely Saunders in 1967, she was in London, and she created hospice, the original hospice. But the focus, and this is important, the focus was on comfort and quality of life to minimize pain for the actively dying. And that's important to remember as we go through this. And her belief was, you matter because you are you. You matter to the last moment of your life, and we will do all we can to help you not only die peacefully, but live until you die. And she was opposed to euthanasia. So the original hospice was a very comforting, caring hospice. And that's important to remember as we go through what has happened today.
Okay, let's go. I'm going to mute everybody just because there's some feedback as
Okay.
we go through this. I'm even muting myself because my dog Karen, might bark. All right.
And this is interesting too. In 1984, Reverend Hugh Westbrook opened the first for-profit hospice after Medicare started paying for hospice, and he expanded over 20 years into Vitus Hospice, which is the largest chain in the United States. So he proved that money could be made off of people who were dying, and everybody then wanted a piece of the action. So at that time, Roto-Rooter, yes, Roto-Rooter, owned 25% of Vitus. And in 2004, they bought the remainder for $410 million. They changed their company name to Chemcore, I guess, because it sounds better than washing your problems down the drain. And in 2024, the CEO made $12,552,000. So definitely, hospice is a big business.
Huge business. Roto-Rooter. That's a
Yeah.
business. All right.
So today, and again, I want to go back to what the qualification was: someone who is actively dying to minimize their pain. But today, if you have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, cancer, which a lot of times people always thought, well, if somebody has cancer, then they're treated by hospice. Cardiac, if you have congestive heart failure, which is what my mother had, which was being treated successfully with medication. If you have COPD, if you have a stroke, kidney disease, or end-stage renal failure. So those were some of the things that qualify for today, and those are treatable. They're treatable issues. And then the other is on the next slide, that people don't realize this part. So if you have a declining status, they call it a palliative performance scale. And if it is less than 50 to 60%, which means that you're not able to take care of yourself, meaning that you're dependent on 3 of 6 activities of daily living, and there's a call, the ADLs, that is bathing yourself, dressing yourself, getting in and out of a chair or a bed, walking or using the toilet, or eating by yourself. If you can't do 3 out of 6 of those things, then they consider that you are dependent on somebody else to do it. And if you start losing weight, you lose 10% of your body weight in 4 to 6 months, and you're deteriorating. You have 3, that's what earlier Terry was talking about, 3 emergency visits. They're considered frequent flyers, and you do get tagged. It's a red flag. And or you have physical activity that you can't do what you used to do. Well, that happens to me often. So I don't think I'm ready for hospice. But with other comorbidities, these qualifications will give you what they need to enroll you. And what people don't understand is a lot of times, the same situation with John, when he was in the hospital for emergency visit, and he had been in there 3 to 4 times, a hospice person will come up into the hospice room and start talking to you. Well, don't you think that maybe you should consider, going into hospice? And case in point, one of the stories in the book, which is Jackie Ferrara with her husband, they came to her and said, do you still, your husband doesn't want to come in here all the time. And she said, why are you talking to me about this? Talk to him. So they went in and talked to him. And of course, he doesn't want to keep coming back and forth to ER. I mean, who would want to do that? And that's how they hooked them into coming to the house so that they could help them. And they offer you all of these wonderful things. They offer you a shower, somebody to come in to help take care of your loved one, to sitter service, to make sure their medication, that they're taking it on time, to bring them oxygen if they need it, bandages, a bedside toilet, a bed, a hospital bed. They bring these things in, and that's how they hook you into saying, we're going to help you. I don't think anybody should need their help or want their help. So I see Jackie's watching us and can attest to that's what happened with her husband. So they show up when you have no clue and you're in the hospital not feeling well. And if you
Sorry, did I lose you? Marsha? Marsha's frozen. You were frozen for a minute.
Okay, I'm back now. So did you hear me talking about the medical equipment and the services that they offer you?
Yeah. I was on the wrong slide, and that's my...
Okay. So I've already talked about that. So they also say they will send a CNA, certified nursing assistant. The nurse will come out 1 day out of the week and provide care for you. And the different levels, and most of the ones is in-home hospice care. It's called routine home care, or continuous home care is the other one. That's a very expensive one. As you can see, it's 24-hour service, or the respite care, which I will talk about shortly here. Or if you're in a hospital or a nursing home, then hospice can come in there. They'll send a nurse in and take care of you. And Teresa and I did a story with Sibel Edmonds last week that just came out. We just published that one. And her husband was in a hospital, when hospice came in, and she did not realize this was happening. He's in the hospital room. They come in and they started giving him the medication. They took him off of taking his regular medication, and he didn't get any water and no food. And he died despite her trying to get him out of hospice. So that's the general inpatient care. And then listed down there are the number of days in each level of care, which you can see that the in-home hospice is the one that is the most used. And there is no more records right now, or they don't have the records out for 2025. So that's why
Yeah.
it's 2024.
Matthew Edmonds' story is on our website under Real Stories, Other Betrayal. It's also on our Rumble, our BitChute, our YouTube channels. So it's quite an incredible story.
Yeah, it's horrific. And she's posted it on her X accounts
Yeah.
and Facebook. So it is out there. And this, I just want to point out that the total deaths in 2024 are greater than 2.5 million. 1.3 million of those are in hospice. So 52% of the people that die are dying in hospice care. And I'm going to tell you, this is a for-profit. This is what this is, whether it is nonprofit or for-profit. They don't work for free. And they will encourage you, the websites that you see, they will encourage you to enroll your loved one sooner. Yep. So that they can give them a good quality of life, and that perhaps they'll live longer. I'm calling Barbara Streisand on that, because that is not what happens. Patients do not live longer when they are brought into hospice.
That's right. And quite the opposite.
Exactly.
It's their death. And it's such a moneymaker that there was a whistleblower doctor that also sued the hospital that he worked at, but they had sent memos to the emergency room and the ICU doctors that when a COVID patient came in, they were to try to get them on hospice right away, because the hospital was losing money if they weren't on hospice when they died.
That's right. Not only do they lose money, but they get a mark against the hospital, because when you go to the hospital, they're supposed to provide care, and you're supposed to be able to leave the hospital. And if they're not doing that and the patient is dying, then that's a mark against the hospital, and they don't want that. So they turn them over to hospice so they can come in and end their life, because they are equipped to do that. They know exactly what to do, and they do it very quickly, and they want to get that death underneath their belt, which I don't know if it's the next slide or not, but when we talk about the aggregate cap, which is really important. Yes. Okay, so in fiscal year, they do by fiscal year, and the aggregate cap this year is 35,361 per patient. And if you look at the costs, the monthly cost, that's why I listed that, of how much for each one: in-home care, the hospice facility or nursing home, medications, equipment, staff care, social and spiritual support. It shows how much money that they get per month on that. So when you take that amount of money on the next slide and you divide that by 6 months, which is the expected life that they're going to live for approximately 6 months, then you get around $6,000. Well, there is your 6-month fee, that aggregate cap. It is lifetime per patient. So the longer that the person stays and is living, it's considered length of stay, which is LOS. Mm-hmm. And if every patient lived more than 6 months, they wouldn't be making a profit, because all that money is gone. And if they're in continuous care or in the hospital facility, it's even going to be at a higher cost, as per the slide before that. So there is actually a cap. Excuse me. There is actually an aggregate cap where the they explain how this works. And a guy is on there, the URL code, not URL, the website is in the previous slide, where down in the blue, where they actually talk about this. And the example that this experienced person who is telling other hospices how they can stay in the black, and he gives an example of if it was 32,000 that year and a patient was in for 30 days and they died, they used $6,000 for him, leaving a delta of 26,000.
Wow.
That 26,000, which the next slide.
Yep. I want to take a second here to remind everybody to share the live stream, whether it's on Facebook, Rumble, or Twitter or X that you're watching. Go ahead and share the live stream and tag your friends so they can come in and ask questions. And if you do have a question in the chat, it's helpful to me if you put a question mark before and after, so that I at the start of the sentence or question, because then I can identify it very quickly as a question and pull it in. Just a little housekeeping note there, but definitely share.
So here's what, and they talk about this, and they're just very cold about it, in my opinion. And they talk about how the money comes in and they have it, they call it a bucket. So for instance, that he was talking about the 32,000 going into the bucket. And if you can see the cash coming out the back, that's what's trickled down for all of the different fees that they're going to get. But, you know, you see the hand there with the profit, because it is a profit organization. But if a person dies in 30 days, they still are going to get that money, but it goes into this bucket. So if somebody lives for 10 months or 12 months, they're obviously taking more than the $35,000 to support that individual. At the end of the year, every year, they have to go back and how many patients did you have? How much money did you put in? Did you request? If the amount is greater than the number of patients times that aggregate cap, they have to pay back money at the end of the year.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right?
So Matt said so in order to make the most money, patients kept to keep patients alive for 6 months, correct? No, the opposite. They kill them quicker. They get, right?
Right. Yeah, they don't make more money if they keep them alive for 6 months. If somebody comes in there and they die in 10 days, they're still going to get that $35,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So
if they die in 10 months, they still got that $35,000, but they had to pay more for their services.
yeah, right.
So they, you know, the bedside, you know, potty, the oxygen, the medication, and hospice will pay for, you know, the medication, which we're going to go into shortly here. But if you are on medication, like my mom was on congestive heart medication, and they would pay for that, but oftentimes, which you'll hear, they will stop giving the medication to the patient. Doesn't mean they tell you that they do, but often they will stop because the money for the medication, you know, if it was LASIK or, you know, heart medication or kidney medication, that's going to come out of hospice money now, because Medicare is paying hospice that $35,000, and anything for the patient is going to come out of that amount of money. So they don't want you to continue with having, you know, any procedure or any other medication. And I was able to get a copy of the comfort kit drugs. And I know that Jackie, that they gave the drugs to her. They'll tell you to put them in the refrigerator. I know that Terry was given the drugs. And when you're in the home hospice, they give you the drugs. So the drugs that they're telling them, this is their instructions. If morphine, which is also called Roxanol, to give that to them for pain, breathing, or coughing. Ativan, which is also called lorazepam, for relieving restlessness, anxiety, and nausea. Haldol, which is also called haloperidol, is if they're restless or they're confused or they're nauseous. So that, and when they give that, just like with Terry, just like with Jackie, just like with many other people, they don't explain what these drugs are going to do to them. They just tell you to give them to them because it's what's best for the patient. And because we don't know what's going on, then we are afraid not to give it to them. And so we give it to them thinking we're doing what's best. So on the next slide, we're going to,
I think this is a very good point here that they
right,
make family members basically part of the murder.
right. And so how's somebody going to feel when they realize what I'm saying that they did unknowingly?
Yeah.
Just like Terry said earlier.
Yeah.
So, and this is important for people to know. Morphine causes drowsiness, dizziness, anxiety, nausea, vomiting, constipation, sweating, low oxygen levels, shortness of breath, confusion, and hallucinations. But they told you to give it to them if they were in pain, if they were having a hard time breathing. So you give them the morphine, which causes shortness of breath, and it causes them to have anxiety. So then you can give them Ativan or Haldol because they're anxious, but you caused that anxiousness. And for morphine, slow breathing may increase if you're taking it with Ativan, which is what they do. An overdose includes slow, shallow breathing, slow heartbeat, coma, or death. And the strongest warning for serious risk and death is by putting opioid, which morphine is, with a benzodiazepine, which Ativan is. So it tells you do not do that.
Right.
That's exactly what they're doing. And Haldol, where they say use it if they're nauseous or if they're anxious. Haldol is an antipsychotic to treat schizophrenia or Tourette syndrome. And the same effects, drowsiness, anxiety, restlessness, nausea, headache, and diarrhea. But that's what they say that it's to help with. But it causes that. It also, the severe side effects are death in elderly. And it is not approved for use in older adults with dementia because of increased chances of death.
Yet they use it all the time.
They use it all the time, all the time. And the Ativan, which is a benzodiazepine, which they say don't use it with opioids, morphine, and it causes the same thing: drowsiness, dizziness, insomnia, constipation, loss of balance, vomiting. And there are other things that it causes, which you're doing this to your loved one. Why would anybody want to torture them? And again, let me go back to, they're not actively dying. They can be treated for this if they're given the proper treatment. John was not dying. My mother was not dying. They could be treated. They start giving them this. And, again, it says, do not take Ativan with morphine or Haldol. That's what they give them. And for people that are naysayers, don't believe it, drugs.com, go look it up. The Beers list, look it up. So, and this is the ham sandwich. So those are the drugs they're talking about: Haldol, Ativan, and morphine. And that's what they're giving them. And there are memes.
Tell people
Is it crazy? Go ahead.
Tell people what the hams, how they phrase it. You didn't make up the ham sandwich. This is their cold way of.
Right. Well, they will say that if a person is combative, or if they're trying to get out of bed, or if their family is argumentative, the nurses, we've seen in Facebook sites, they have memes about it. Oh, well, I just tell them I'll give them a ham sandwich if they don't straighten up, or if they try to get out of bed, I just give them a ham sandwich. And that's what they do. Haldol, Ativan, and morphine, which it says do not put those drugs together, and especially for the elderly over 65, because it is going to affect them more seriously and it will kill them. And this is what hospice is doing. So, when people, I talk to people all the time and they will say, well, hospice was compassionate. They were so nice. And you're just making that up. You're trying to find somebody to blame. I don't need to try to find somebody to blame. I know who to blame. Hospice. They did that. They gave those drugs to the people. So if you gave these same drugs in the same amounts over the same time frame that they gave them to our loved ones, a strong, healthy, strapping young man with absolutely no issues, big boy, and this would happen to them if you gave them the same drugs, they would die. So
Right.
how can you say that you're not murdering people?
Right. And we know that they're like, well, it keeps them it keeps them out of pain and in peace. But as we know, that just because they're quiet doesn't mean that there's any peace. It just means that they can't fight back. But they could, as we hear from survivors of attempted hospice homicide, they're not at peace. They just their ability to fight back is taken away, and more pain is caused. So uh, there's a lot of myths around what happens at hospice. Matt asked, do the staff get paid for administering the drugs?
Yes. I mean, that's their job. They get paid to administer the drugs and to tell the family, gaslight the family and tell the family that you're doing the right thing. It's just, this is a sign of dying. Well, people will say, my dad would have said to us, my sister and I, if we had not been there, he would have said, your mother died peacefully in her sleep,
Sure.
because he did not realize what they were doing. He was the hospice chaplain 10 years earlier, but he never saw this. He didn't see people dying. He went to their homes and prayed with them, read the Bible or sang. And to him, when this was happening, he thought that they just knew that it was mom's time to die. And had he said to us, had we not gone down there to Georgia, and he said, your mother died peacefully in her sleep, we would have believed it,
Yeah.
never knowing they tortured her, and the hearing is the last to go. And she probably was trying, she tried to get out of bed. And we thought at one point that it was because she had to urinate and that she didn't want to wet in the bed. And, my sister said, Mom, it's okay. You have a catheter in. It's okay. It's okay. But was she trying to get out of the bed because she knew that they were killing her? I mean, we don't know that. We don't know. And this is another, ham sandwich. Thank you, Teresa,
Mm-hmm.
for what happens, and it has fatal consequences. And a nurse, it's a domino effect for people. You've given them morphine, you've caused anxiousness, so you can convince the family that they're anxious, and they might furrow their brow or raise their eyelid or raise a hand. A lot of times, people will raise their hand and they will tell you, oh, it's because they're in pain, or they wince. Well, maybe
Right.
they're hallucinating from the morphine and the antipsychotics you gave them, but they will use that as an opportunity to convince the family that it's time to give them more medicine, more morphine, or more Ativan or Haldol. So they use that against the family by telling them that they are exhibiting the signs of being in pain when they're caught, like Jackie said a while ago, they're causing that. They're causing the pain, the anxiety, so that they can convince the family to give them more drugs.
So remember the ham sandwich. Jackie said, I'm so sorry, Marcia.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. Let's move a ham sandwich. This one gets me. It's
Yeah,
such
you do so well on this one, Gail.
propaganda. This is just here's the propaganda. They make it sound like nobody should be in pain at the end of their life. To take away that pain and give someone peace is the absolutely least we can do for our fellow human beings. Well, the MD doesn't stand for minor deity. It should stand for medical doctor. The reason that this irritates me so much, this entire thing, is there are so many lies that sound true on it. It sounds like they're doing something good and they are
Mhm.
not. I would say nobody should rob another human being of 1 second of life. They are not the creator and author of life. God is. And you could rob somebody of 1 day of life, and that could have been the day that they take care of all their unfinished business on earth. Or that could be one more day that their loved ones get to see them and they get to maybe hug their grandkids one more time before they leave this earth. Or it could be another 5 months, or it could be another 5 minutes. But either way, it is not up to them to take it. And you're not giving them peace. You have no idea what goes on in their head when they're drugged and you're taking away their ability to speak and cry out. And to just because there's pain, if I stub my toe, I don't want somebody coming along and euthanizing me. I might be in a lot of pain, but I may even cuss. I may, may even, yell at my husband if I stubbed my toe on something of his. But that doesn't mean I want them to come and off me. And we've heard from widows who have just simply asked if their husbands were in pain, and then doctors came and upped the medication and said not anymore, and they died within, that's just murder. But then
That's murder.
the other thing that really just irritates me about this is evidence-based care. I'm so sick of hearing about evidence-based care when they know darn well it has nothing to do with evidence and it has everything to do with incentives. If the incentives weren't there, they wouldn't be as inclined to do it. What if they got incentivized? Let's say they got incentivized for, keeping patients alive longer. They would do the complete freaking opposite. Whoever
Absolutely.
put this together is a monster. I'm gonna say it. And I'm gonna hear from people that work in hospice that are gonna be like, but I lovingly give people, maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you don't know, maybe you don't realize that what is being fed to you as compassion is indifference. And there's nothing noble about indifference to somebody's life, how they live it. I This is incentive based care, not evidence based care. I'm on a soapbox. Marcia, take it away.
No, and I agree with you. And, something you said made me think about this. I had William Toffler on my program a couple of years ago, and he had said, he was talking about the drugs that they used for people that are on death row, right? And they give them a paralytic, so they can't move. They
Yeah.
give them an opioid, and they give them an antipsychotic. And these are the drugs that they use to kill people. And there's a chapter in my book on that. And the same drugs that they use on people on death row are the
Mhm.
same type drugs that they're giving our loved ones. And let me go back and say that these are not people that are dying. They are not dying. It's not at the end of their life when they're having a hard time breathing and they've gone into a natural coma. This is not that. These are people that are being treated successfully with medication.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Liz is correct. It's comfort care. The truth is it's murder. There's nothing comfortable about what they're doing to them. And you again, you don't know how they feel and what they are sensing. And if you do not give a patient, a loved one, water, so they're being denied food and water. Think about that, Gail, when you were being denied water.
Yeah.
When I work outside in the yard and I don't come in and drink enough water, when I go to bed at night, I have cramps in my leg. And sometimes I'll jump out of bed and, get my husband to rub my legs, or I bounce around. But the fact is, I can drink water. I keep water by my bedside. If my mother had cramps in her legs or her arms, which I assume that she did, then she would wince and she might cry out,
That's
but
right.
maybe it's because she needs water. Maybe because the dehydration is causing her excruciating pain. And do they ever consider that? No.
Right. And survivors will tell you it was very painful to go without. I went without water for 7 days. It was incredibly
Yes,
painful. Going without food for 12 days or more was not as painful. It was numbing, but going without water was excruciating.
right.
I have never taken water for granted again since that experience. So, um, yeah, wow,
And that's what they're doing.
that is exactly what they're doing.
So other drugs, just quickly on this one, fentanyl, it's also called Duragesic, and it's an opioid that is 100 times stronger than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin. They measure it in micrograms because of how potent it is, and it's usually a 72-hour patch, and it starts at 12.5 micrograms, 25 micrograms, 50, and 100. They were giving my mother 100 micrograms plus morphine plus Ativan when she was in the respite facility.
So wait, just,
So it's just, and you shouldn't be using it, with all the other drugs because you're doubling that. And some of the other drugs that I've heard people use is the Seroquel and midazolam are also drugs, but they're not as common as the ham.
yeah, exactly. Yep, Lisa incentivized to end their life sooner than 6 months. It's the same concept of the code, the billing code that they had come up with for COVID and Medicare, which was a code that allowed them to get paid for 14 days, regardless of how long the patient was there. And so, if you died in 5 days, which we see that's the average for people on Medicare, you kill them in 5 days, you still get paid for 14 days, plus you get all the bonus money. It's a big payday. I can tell you the hospital that tried to kill me added 5 floors and another helicopter pad to their hospital. So yeah, a couple years ago. So yeah, they were making a lot of money.
So they can bring more patients in.
Yeah,
So in this one I put in here because if your loved one is having pain, to begin with, you can give them Tylenol. And a lot of the people that I've talked to and the stories in the book that all their loved one ever needed was Tylenol. They were not in pain, but you can give them something less by starting with Tramadol or meperidine, codeine, hydrocodone.
yeah,
Those are less strong than morphine. So why wouldn't you, if that's the point, why wouldn't you give them something less strong? Well, let's go back to this. You wouldn't, because the entire reason is so you can put them in a coma, flip that bed, get them out, get somebody else in, because they have said LOS, length of stay, is what keeps your cap in the black.
that's
And
right.
these are people that work in hospice that say that.
So Lisa Butler asked, "Will this presentation be available on Portrayal Project's website to refer back to?" Yes, we're gonna put all of the presentations that you see this week into a PDF and put them on the downloadables so that you can, and also the videos will be available as well on all of our platforms. We definitely, because we definitely want you to have this, and this week has taught us that we need to have maybe even a monthly educational session for everyone. We're kicking that around and would love to hear the topics. Send us the topics you want to hear. We'll figure it out. We love to work. We love work.
So this one is near and dear to my heart, respite care, because that's how my mother was murdered. And for those people that don't know it, it's a facility in hospice where you go to for the caregiver to get rest, because being a caregiver is very difficult. After my mom was murdered, my dad was 89 and he moved in with my husband and I and me. He moved in with my husband and me. And my sister does that to me if I don't say it the right word, me. And he lived there until he was almost 94. And it is difficult. He had dementia before he passed. But on this particular one, there was one site, and I want to kind of read this to you because this is how they make the facility sound. Spacious private room suites, natural woodwork and views of surrounding gardens, a great room with a grand piano and a fireplace, fully equipped kitchen, a chapel with handcrafted stained glass art, easily accessible natural areas and gardens with a gazebo, a labyrinth and space for visiting or contemplation. Well, if your loved one is dying and they're in a wheelchair, and they put them in a coma and they're laying in the bed with their mouth open, I hardly see that they can go out and enjoy all of this.
Yeah, that they kind of did that with my aunt too, where it was the place was described as the doors open up to an outdoor oasis with birds and deer and that will come and feed, and but they drugged her into a coma the very next day, right? So what does it matter?
Right. So how's she going to see that? And Mary Nettles was one of the ones that I wrote about in the book. And they promised her a spa-like experience. They were going to fix her hair and do her fingernails, and she would have a personal chef to prepare her meals. It was a lie. It was a manipulation to get her out. And the reason that they were doing that is they had decided that, and this is one, I want to talk about the medicine for a minute, that when they came in, the nurse, I believe that her daughters referred to her as Nurse Ratchet. And when they came in, she said, took out the pills out of the pill box and goes, Mary, we're not doing this anymore. You're sick and we're not going to continue to take these pills. She took them out. Her daughter noticed that she wasn't feeling very well and she saw that the pills were out. She put the pills back in. When the nurse came back the following week, she actually chastised Mary and yelled at her and said, Mary, I told you we're not doing this. Now you're just going to have to make a decision. You're not supposed to be taking these anymore. And so they took her off of her medication again. And her daughters decided that they were going to get somebody to come in to provide additional health care and perhaps let hospice go because they didn't like how this was going. They talked the daughters, into letting their mom go to the respite facility where they could get some rest and they could make some phone calls and they could get some help there. And that's what they used, telling her it'd be like a spa-like experience. She died in 5 days at this spa-like experience. She never came home. And they didn't tell her, they were giving her, you're not in a place where they can see what they're doing to them. And they immediately started drugging her. And in my mom's case, I was at home when I got a phone call from her. I was outside cutting the grass, so I didn't get it till the evening. When I called her back, she didn't answer. So I called my sister. She said they've taken her to the respite wing in the hospital, and they're just going to keep her for a few days while dad can get some rest. They took dad to put him in a room across from her. And within a couple of days, I called every day and talked to her. That was on Friday. And that night, and I didn't know this until I got the medical records. That night, they started giving her morphine. The next morning, they told her that hers was causing constipation. The next morning, she was crying. And this is in the medical records, which it's really important to get medical records. And they asked her why she was crying. And she said, I am afraid of morphine. That was non-consent. She did not give them consent to give her morphine. In fact, just the opposite. Then they started giving her Ativan. On top of that, they gave her 100 micrograms of fentanyl. My mom lived the longer of all of the people in my story, only because at one point we told them to stop the morphine and the Ativan because I'd heard of morphine. I didn't know what Ativan was. I wasn't, savvy at that time, so I didn't look it up. I should have, and I fault myself for not looking it up. And that was the year that you started hearing about the police that would touch the street fentanyl, and they would, go into, heart attack, and then they gave them Narcan, which we didn't know anything about that. But we had stopped the drugs. Then they talked my sister into starting back the morphine and Ativan, and then she started going downhill again. And even though we were in the room with her, all of us staying 24/7, they killed her. 10 days.
Okay, I need to go past this one real quick because your sister's gonna see the typo that's on here. I'm just kidding. I'm making fun of you.
So, and this is what happened to the people. The patients walk in the front door, and I misspelled the G. It's a T, in the front door, and they're wheeled out the back in a body bag. And another one, Shirley, she went in. They told her she lived in a assisted living facility, and they told her she was going to go to the hospice respite for a tune-up. That's what they told her, for a tune-up, and that then she would come back feeling better. She was dead in 15 hours.
A tune-up.
A tune-up. That's what she was told. And this one will really make you sick. Dale was living in assisted living, had just ordered something off of Amazon, and had his little kitchenette in his apartment. And he'd go down, to get food in the facility, but he could also cook his own food. And he spilled coffee on himself after he had ordered from Amazon. So the man is technically savvy to do that. He spilled coffee on himself. This was during COVID. And because his son could not come and help him, he wanted a shower. And hospice said, he was in hospice care. They would come to the facility, but he was being treated with medication. And they said they could not send somebody out there to give him a shower, but they could come pick him up with the transport unit, take him back to their facility, and give him a shower.
Wow.
Right? He was dead in 2 days. They gave him the wrong medication for one thing, and they said he was anxious, and so they gave him something because he was anxious, and then they gave him the morphine. 2 days, he was dead. And Wayne Kindred, he went because his wife, to give his wife a break, and he had, mild dementia, and she had told him, these are the things that, concern me, when you have him in there, and, the way that you talk to him. She sent hydration little packages, the IV hydration, so that he would make sure that he stayed hydrated there. And that night, they gave him the Ativan Benadryl Haldol cream, ABH cream, and they had told him to only give this much to him, because if you give him anything more, it upsets him. Well, they gave him the more of that, and then they gave him Haldol because he was on the bed rocking, saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. They upset this man. Then they started giving him morphine. And his wife, Rena, called the very next morning to check on him. And she said, how do you do? Oh, well, he's fine. He's resting peacefully now. He's sleeping. He was there for 8 days, and they never, ever called the wife and told him what was happening. He died in 8 days. And note the hydration, when the daughters got there and looked, he had never been given any of the hydration. He had never been given food. He had never been given water. He had been given straight doses of drugs. and he died. So I checked in our group. I did a quick check, and this is in 24 before I wrote the book. And within those people that I asked all of them, 25 people came back and said that their loved one had died in hospice. I mean, in the
Wow.
hospice respite.
Yeah, please get the book, your books. So Jackie said to anyone watching, please get the book that Marsha wrote, and we're going to talk about that. That is on Amazon, and it is Betrayed by Hospice: Stories from the Deathbed. I have it, and it is a good read. It helped us save a life, so definitely worth it. Before we go on to red flags, I want to show people something here real quick, just really quick. As you hear Marsha talking about stories, these are real people. You see these faces.
Can you stop right there? Okay, over to the right, the last one on the right, that is Twyla Apgar. No, below that. That's
Yeah,
Twyla Apgar. That is April Donovan's mom. The one up here to the second one right there,
Matthew Edmonds.
that is Matthew Edmonds. And if you go straight down two more rows,
Anthony
this
Farah.
is, no, that right here, that's Jackie's husband, Anthony Ferrara.
Yeah, right here.
This, yes, that's right. And then go down to the next row, the second one over. That's Wayne Kendra that I just told you about, that was murdered in the respite facility.
See, all medical crime victims, but these are real people. They have real families. They had real, Maud Frost was a real person killed by hospice. Do you see all of
And
these?
there's Alan Eisner, which is his wife, he was murdered, and his wife Liz started Murdered by Hospice. And that's why she started it, because her husband was murdered.
So when Marsha's talking about these people, when we're talking about families and the medical crime victims, these are real faces. These are just real faces, and so I wanted to make that point and just say that. And then Ron Owens had mentioned during the vigil that every victim of a crime, there are approximately 7 to 10 co-victims that are affected. So think about that. Millions and millions and millions. Go ahead.
Right.
So I'm gonna go to the red flags, because I think the red flags are very important. The life you save could be your own. It could be somebody you love. But go ahead and talk about the red flags.
Well, these are things that we've noticed, myself and other people. And in the stories, when you read them, you see the common thread that goes through them, just like you do with the COVID protocol, with the remdesivir and the venting and refusing to give ivermectin. Well, we have things that are red flags, and it's the protocol there. So if your loved one is sitting up talking to you, they're eating, they're drinking, and the next day or soon after, they're slumped over in a chair, they're laying in the bed, that's not right. That's not a normal person that's dying from one day to the next. That's not how it happens. If they're sleeping all the time, and this is quickly, if all of a sudden they're there and now they're sleeping all the time, and then they're laying there, and as Gail, we've talked about this, that when you walk past in all of the hospice rooms where my mom was, every single person was laying in bed with their mouth opened, in the O shape, and they're in a coma. They stop taking their regular medication, like my mom did, if the hospice allows them to continue taking their medication. Again, I explained that oftentimes they stop that medication. If they can't communicate, they're slurring their language. If they can't see you, they have their eyes are glassy and hazed. I know with my mom, she didn't see me when I got there after driving 12 hours, to go down and attempt to save her. She didn't even know me. She didn't see me. And Liz Eisner, she followed the transport unit from the hospital to the rehab facility. By the time she got there, Alan, when she finally got into his room, they would not let her go into the room until she signed the papers. They handed her the papers, just like Terry said, and she quickly signed them. In that was a hospice paper. She had no clue that's what she was signing. She wanted to get back to see her husband. She got back there and he said, "Is my wife here?" Because that quickly from the hospital where he could see her, that quickly, the drugs they gave him, he could not see his own wife. His eyes were glassy and hazed over. That's not normal. They stopped eating and drinking, and hospice will tell you that's a sign of dying. They're transitioning. And often, if their oxygen is on, there have been cases where it's been turned off or it's been lowered so low that they're not getting enough oxygen. The fact
Wow.
is, these signs are signs of an overdose just as well as they're signs of dying, but it isn't a natural death. They have been put into this situation.
And that's
It's
true. And
murder.
I've seen it. And this is someplace where there is um, absolute crossover between well, a lot of the protocol victims were put on hospice or palliative care and experience the same thing. Matt said, "Gail, Marsha, we need a hospice deadly playbook for the website. We are working on that. The action is on me. Marsha has written the draft. The action is on me to review it and have a discussion." So that's just, I'm making myself accountable right now. That action is on my plate. And after Crime Week, that's one of the first things I'll be looking at, because you're right. We do need that playbook out there as well, because
Mhm.
it will save lives. And that's our goal. That's our primary goal for all of this, is to save lives. And I just want to say, we have an incredible amount of people watching right now. So this is the biggest we've seen all week. And so I'm glad, because everybody needs this information. This is something that could affect every single human being. You probably,
Mhm.
it's probably already affected you and you didn't even realize it at the time, like I did. So this is some great information, Marcia. Let's go to the next slide.
Well, we have had, and I'll say what you just were talking about, we have had members in our group that have found us in time in the Murdered by Hospice group, and they have come in and they've told us that they took their loved one off of hospice and it's been 6 months. They're still alive. We've had people 2 years because Murdered by Hospice has been out there since, and Liz, tell me if I'm wrong, 2015, I believe, is when she started that group. So we have had people that have saved their loved ones. They have lived for 2 years. So it is saving people. And that, as Gail says, that's our only goal. We have no other alternative to do this. It's to save people. It's to save you. It's to save your loved ones, because we don't want you to go through what we went through, the heartache, the shattered lives. It's horrible.
I
And
mean,
nobody should have to go through this.
right. I mean, we want accountability for all of this stuff, and we're going to keep going, but to get accountability, but saving, it's like this weird kind of battle, because people who are in any situation, whether it's trying to save a loved one in hospice or a hospital or whatever, there's this fog of war, right? Like they're having to make life and death decisions, and they're tired and they need advocacy, because they are solid advocacy, not the advocacy in the hospice facility, not the people that work for the facility who
Right.
are really just trying to cover legally, but they need they needed good advice and good help. And I've lived that fog. I'm a survivor of that fog of war. It's very difficult to make courageous decisions because, but the reality is, survivors, whether it's hospital survivors or hospice survivors, it is the same thing that makes them a survivor, and that is the interruption of the protocol, of the playbook, of the, of stepping in and stopping what's happening. And the, for those whose loved ones died, we have heard story after story where they tried desperately to interrupt it. But here's the thing, and it comes down to family being on the same page. I'm alive because my family was on the same page. I have seen time and time again hospitals, hospice centers, long term care facilities, even rehabs and nursing homes. They will find the weakest link in your family, and they will give all the power they can to that weakest link, and they will call them for decisions behind everybody else's back. They will focus, they will shut the strong people out, and they will focus on the weakest link. So just for your own self, identify who the strong and the weak are in your circle, and make sure you are giving power only to your strongest, most courageous people. And even if you have to say to the weakest links in your family, I'm sorry, I can't, I can't have you have anything to do with my decision making because you're an emotional weak link or whatever. Say it nicer, don't say it like I would say it. But I was fortunate that my daughter and my husband were both very strong. So Matt asked a question earlier that I want to ask you, Marcia. He said something about, are there any hospice centers that are true to their original mission?
Well, it's a good question. Halo Voice, which, I work a lot with Julie Grimstad, and they've had their group out there for a really long time. And when I first started doing this, I went and talked to Julie and I said, do you have a list of hospices that are pro-life and that I could recommend to our group? No, because the problem is that they might be good today and maybe somebody does have a good experience with them, but we can't guarantee that they haven't gone rogue. And if you looked at reviews on hospice, you would see that a lot of people, oh, they were so compassionate, they really helped me, and they were so good to our family. So you really have to be careful of even trusting other people's reviews, because they don't know. They think their loved one died peacefully in their sleep.
Right.
So no. Now, Halo Voice does have a list of questions that you should ask a hospice, and that is helpful. That's a good resource. But for myself, I would never allow hospice in my realm again. And my dad did not want hospice involved with him, and I honored that wish. They were not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Now, something when we're talking about things you can do, the Sibel Edmonds contacted the ombudsman, and several other people have talked about contacting the ombudsman. That did not help. So unfortunately, that's not going to be an avenue for you to go to.
But do you think, I don't know if thousands of people contacted, I mean, that showing the pattern, right? Like, and showing that that you did contact who you're supposed to contact might be helpful. But one of the things we always say is, don't expect the government necessarily to help you, but make the agency's aware so that they can't say they didn't know. They can't claim plausible deniability.
Well, that's absolutely true. And even though, none of us, and we tried to get attorneys, and that doesn't work because hospice has mass mutual insurance. They're not going to settle out of court, and it's not worth it to an attorney to fight the case because they're not going to get enough money out of it. And one of the things they look at is, my mother was 87. Well, she wasn't working. She wasn't bringing in money. So there is no money loss. And that is a lot of what the government, the courts look at. Well, are you missing out on money because the fact that your mother was taken from you that you believe was earlier than it should have been? They look at the money. To us, it's not about money. It's about loved life. It's about our people that we loved and their life was taken from us. So they're not going to do that. What you said earlier about, talking to your family, Halo Voice has a life-affirming medical proxy document, which establishes who your advocate is. And if you don't have one of this, it's not a living will, it's a life-affirming document. And everybody should have an advocate in the event that you are not capable, you're incapacitated, you can't speak for yourself. John Wargen was able to speak for himself, but they did not ask him to sign anything. They asked Terry to sign everything. So you want to have this document, and you want the person who's going to be advocating for you to be someone who loves you and does not want you to not be around any longer, because we have had cases of that, whether it be monetary or somebody just doesn't want to deal with taking care of you. So can you go back to the other slide so I can just quickly go over that?
That one?
One more. Okay, so the hospice, what Matt was asking about earlier, part of that is there is no consent given. They give medication to people. They do not explain what it is or what it's for or what it will do. And they do not request your consent. You do not give their consent, and they still give it to you. If somebody gave you some drugs, out on the street, and you die from those drugs, that person can be held accountable because you did not have consent for that to be given those drugs. If they've added something else to it, that is an offense. It is a crime to do that. And if you ask them why your person is sleeping all the time or they can't talk, they would tell you they're transitioning, that it's the end of life. I already talked about how they get you to give them more pain medication. And if you say that, my mom was feeling better today, which we said, she's doing better. We were trying to, giving her little sips of water. And the nurse said, she's just rallying. That doesn't mean anything. I've had people get up and walk around the room and eat, and then they die the next day. So don't think that she's turning a corner. So they want to discourage you from thinking that your loved one is going to get better. They call it rallying, and then they'll tell you they could die within hours. They don't want you to touch the patient. Don't wake them. Let them sleep. They're sleeping now. Don't wake them. You're bothering them. Don't rub lotion on them. And often they give you a book, something like Gone Too Soon, which talks about the drying process. It's also a drug overdose process. That's what happens. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm just trying to go over it quickly because
in case good. People are, we have a lot of people that are watching live. So,
okay. So
information's needed.
Okay. If the person is asleep, and that was the case with my mom, then they came in and gave her more drugs. And at the time, I didn't realize this was going on. I think we were kind of just in a fog with trying to save her. And they will say that if they don't give it to them, on that Friday, she had the 50 microgram patch on that they had put on the fentanyl. The nurse, Saleha, was getting ready to put the second patch on. And I said, just don't do that. I was grasping at straws. She said, come out into the hallway. The hearing is the last to go. And she said, if we don't, she will be chasing the pain. After my mother was dead and I went to her doctor and told him that, he said, that's not true. She wouldn't have been. But that's what the nurse told me. And I didn't want my mom to be in pain. So we ignorantly allowed her to put that second patch on. So there are so many things I would do differently. They told us, and often people have been told when you ask about the morphine, oh, it's just a whisper. It's just the smallest amount. I gave it to my daughter who broke her arm. We tried to
Yeah.
move my mom. Yeah, we tried to move my mom from the hospital to get hydrated, and they said she would drown from dying, and it's a horrible way to go. You don't want that. They will not let you give them, even if they're begging for food. I believe Twyla Apgar, April Donovan's mom, wanted food, and they would not let her have any food because she might aspirate. She might start choking. Well, I would rather choke than be, murdered with drugs. Um, and they're always saying that it's in the patient's best interest to do this, and you're gaslit the entire time.
So that answers your question, Matt, about why hospices are so unreliable. Well, first of all, to be quite honest, I don't even care if they say that they're a Christian hospice. They have a very secular view of life and death and
That's
what
right.
is the greater good. And they do play God. They do think it. Sometimes they believe that they are doing the world a moral good by putting people out of their misery. Well, you don't put your a family member down like a family pet, and I, I mean, pain doesn't should not be a reason to kill somebody. It, if
Well,
I mean,
and a lot of times they're not in pain, Gail. A
exactly,
lot of the patients were not in pain, and they gave them the medication anyway
or
because it's part of,
they make them be in pain. Like
right, right.
if given these drugs, you might be in pain, because that I see often, the confusion and the fear, and they want to rush in with a drug when, like, I watched my husband with Andy's mom, just hold her hand, they would, you know, hold the hand, stroke her hair, talk calmly, and then they
Hmm.
calm down. You don't, but the nurse will rush in with a freaking drug to stop them from, having any type of anxiety. And
Right.
it's like, try the things that are not medication first. The human things, human touch goes a long way, long way.
Music. What, play their music. If they like Christian music or they like country,
Yeah.
jazz, whatever, play music, show them pictures, bring in a photo album. I mean, those are ways to calm somebody down. Read them scripture in the Bible, or read them, a
Yeah.
book that they like. And, especially if the hearing still has to go, there are other ways to calm someone and give them that sense of peace without drugging them.
Yeah.
So the DNR, this is one of the thing. Yeah, Liz says her husband was not in pain. So, and that's true. A lot of people are not. A DNR, and I didn't find out this till uh, towards the end of me writing my book, because I had just always assumed when you went into hospice, they give you a DNR to sign, and everybody just signs it. It's in with a packet of paper. You do not have to sign a DNR to enroll into hospice. And they will tell you you can't call 911. That's not true. And they say if you call them, you can't come back to the hospice. That's not true. I know Jackie Farrar called them. Terry called them. I mean, many, many people in the book had called 911, and they went back to hospice. Maybe they went to a different hospice, or they went back to the same one, but you can do that, or you can revoke hospice. And another misconception is hospice is compassionate, not the ones that we've witnessed. There may be some out there, but I would not recommend any of them.
Yeah, Liz says she was forced to sign a DNR.
Hmm. Before she could see her husband,
Yeah,
before anything. Yeah,
we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot. If you just sign this DNR, we'll let you. What?
right.
That that's a crime, and that's one of those things that I think should be reported as a federal crime is the changing of DNRs without
Hmm.
um, without
Consent.
without consent, without a signature by committee or any of that, but also the you can't see your loved one until you sign this DNR. That is
Hmm.
absolutely
Right,
criminal.
right. And I already talked about non-hospice being, that they say that's safer. They're in business to make money.
Yeah, yeah,
And they say that just like Matthew was asking a while ago, Matt was asking that, does hospice make more money if the person lives longer? And we've had hospice nurses come into our group and say, y'all are wrong. You're conspiracy theorists. You're telling people wrong information. Hospice patient, the longer that they stay, the more money that hospice makes. That's an outright lie. It
yeah.
refer to the aggregate cap. That is not true. In hospice, this is from one of the Vitus website. Remember me telling you Vitus is owned by ChemCore, which used to be Roto-Rooter. Hospice provides the most meaningful improvement to the quality of life when it begins sooner in a patient's disease process rather than later. And it further stated at their website that patients' families say they wish they had gotten hospice sooner. Hospice does not give your loved one a better life. They die sooner. They don't have better quality of life because, as Gail said, they don't get to tell their loved ones goodbye. They don't get to hug them. They don't get to, if there's, a problem between two loved ones and they want to say, I'm sorry, or they want to say, I love you, or they want to accept Jesus Christ at the last minute, they don't get that opportunity
That's right,
to
and
do.
that's a big one. That's a big one, Marcia. That's the
Right.
biggest crime and sin in this whole thing is you don't know what that person needs before they die. And deathbed
Exactly.
conversions happen all the time. So how dare
Right.
they not see each individual as a precious soul? These are not these facilities often only care about the physical body, the physical condition of somebody, and they don't even care about that. But they see somebody in bad condition and think that there's nothing worthwhile there, but there's a soul. We are a soul first.
Right. Well, and you don't have the right to determine what somebody's quality of life is.
That's right. That's right. Jackie
So
said provoked hospice and they came in and took over again. It was so
yeah,
hard.
it was when she was in the hospital. And she took him into the hospital because he was overdosed. And even the EMT said that. They asked her, what did you give him? And she explained that I gave them this, 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 and this. And she's got a list of it. And they said he's overdosed. She came into the 911, into the emergency room, and they were treating him. And the hospice person came back in and said he's under hospice care. Jackie said,
Wow.
no, he's not. Yes, he is. And they took him back against what she wanted them to do. They had her so confused and so upset. And just, as he was leaving, he was trying to say something to her. And Jackie, feels all this, angst because she doesn't know what he was saying. And she was telling him, I'm going to help you. We're going to be okay. And then when you're not able to do that, I mean, I thought I could come and, save the day and save my mom. When you're not able to do that, the guilt is just overwhelming. And the other thing they say is that they have individualized care plans. Every plan is the same. If you read the stories in the book, every story is the same. They use the same drugs. They told them the same gaslit things. It is a one size fits all drugs. It is not individualized to your person. And one of the slides which we missed, which I want to go get you to go back to that if we can. Go ahead and go to Fulton Sheen.
Uh,
Okay.
he
Fulton Sheen says, I'm sorry?
I said he was a man before his time.
Yeah, he says the refusal to take sides on great moral issues is itself a decision. It is a silent acquiescence to evil. The tragedy of our time is those who still believe in honesty lack fire and conviction, while those who believe in dishonesty are full of passionate conviction. That is so true. That is so true. I'd like to, can you switch back real quick to the services that they say they offer? Because this one really got me.
Let me go back. Everybody shield your eyes. And then I'm going to go forward again.
Yeah.
Is
okay,
this it?
Right here. This is
one?
it. Okay. No,
this is it.
Go back.
Next one. That one?
That one. Okay. Here, these are things that in the hospice facility sites, this is what they say that they offer: physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language pathology services, medical social services, dietary counseling, spiritual, grief and loss, the respite care, which we talked about. But that physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, dietary counseling, nobody that I have ever talked to has received that. In fact, some of the people have asked for it, and the hospices have told them they don't do that. But it's in their list of services that they are supposed to provide. It doesn't happen. It's more of that gaslighting. It's promises made but not kept.
Yeah.
So, and the grief counseling, their chaplain, after they murdered my mom, called me, and he's like, when I started talking to him and I started ranting and raving, I was so angry. And they killed my mom. And he said, "Oh, I think you need grief counseling. We have somebody who's really good." And I said, "I don't believe that who just took my mother is capable of giving me grief counseling." No.
Right.
So,
right. And they don't
no.
they certainly don't account for I think some of their grief counseling and loss counseling is, and this is me because I'm skeptical, right? And I don't, it's like if the perpetrator was counseling you and trying to lead you to where you don't want to go, right? So like you could be thinking, wow, did they kill my loved one? Did they kill? And their grief counseling that they offer before and after a patient's death is that counselor is going to gaslight you into believing that it's this. No, that's the natural process of death. Oh no, this is how it is. It's just misplaced grief. That's how grief works.
Uh-huh.
When you're inside, you're screaming, this doesn't make sense. Something went wrong. And that grief counselor is there to make sure you don't put the pieces together.
Well,
Period.
it's insult to injury.
Yes, it is.
That's what it is. So
it is.
Okay, so we can go back through. Everybody shield your eyes again. We're going quick. We're moving. But I just wanted to point that out because that is something they're supposed to give you and they don't. Okay, so this, I don't know if we have time for this, but
we do. Let me go to we do. We got time.
Okay, we have time. Okay, so what can you do? What can you do before it's too late? Well, you can consider health care. You can see if your family members can alternate taking turns. You have other options besides hospice. Check them out in your state. And yeah, Terry says there is no grief counseling. Her mom is in hospice now, and her dad was killed. His story's in the book, but her mom is still alive in hospice, and she's fighting the system to keep her alive. Check out halovoice.org for the questions that you can ask. And again, I'm not aware of any pro-life hospice, but you want to tell them if you do feel that you need to go into that, maybe your person has cancer and is at the end of life, with only a week or two, and that, then maybe you would consider them if your doctor will not give you something for pain, if they are truly in pain. But you want to tell them absolutely no drugs. This is without my consent. And then you should do the research to find out what the drugs do, or read my book because it is all in there. And if something seems off, trust your gut and take reaction. Get a copy of the medical records while your person is alive, and don't accept, no, we can't give those to you. Yes, they can, especially if you're their advocate. Get the medical records and see what they're giving them. Get the list of drugs and document absolutely everything during this process, because you don't know if you're going to need it. And if they've done something nefarious, you are going to need it. And you can't remember dates and doses and all of that. So take all that information down and take advantage of the resources, because we do have some resources that you can go to. Betrayal Project USA is one of them.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to the next.
Yeah.
And one of the main things is the guilt that people feel. It doesn't belong on your shoulders. Please don't take that guilt with you, because it belongs with them. You didn't know what they were doing. And then this discussion is to teach you, if you didn't know, and in the future, you can't go backwards, but don't take that guilt on. They knew what they were doing. They're trained how to manipulate, and they took advantage of you. They took advantage of me and all the rest of us. And don't let your other family members or any of your friends tell you, oh, you're just grieving, and that's not really what happened, because you witnessed it, and that is what happened. And again, document everything, like I was saying, the facts. And you're going to want to reach out to the medical director at the facility and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, CMS, in writing, or I've listed a phone number for you. If you believe a crime was committed, contact the police. And if you don't think that your person should have been in hospice, they didn't meet the qualifications, that's fraud, report it to the OIG. And I've got the number there, as well as the website, to report that to them.
Okay.
Because it's important. And, a lot of times people say, and Gail, I know you've heard this, but it won't do any good. Well, here's the thing. If you report it, and like in our group, 7,000 people, if all 7,000 people reported that a crime had been committed, that this hospice in Tennessee, this one in Georgia, this one in Alabama, this one in Virginia, this one in Florida, if everybody reported that, maybe they don't do anything. But I'll tell you what, we go back to when you see that there's a pattern, and at some point, if they ever looked at this, they would see all of these people reported this. Oh, well, this person did it. Look how many we have here. But if you don't report it, there is absolutely no documentation that is sitting there that says this happened. You have to report it. Even if nothing's done, you have to report that this happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. And we would like also, if people do report, we would like them to send us a copy or proof of that, so that we can kind of collect that and make, like I keep saying, make a federal case out of it, but make an issue out of it. We've got midterms coming up, and all sorts of opportunities to raise awareness to the plight of medical crime victims, and how they've been denied justice. Matt said if enough people report a crime, it creates a pattern, and eventually they report to, and eventually they see it as a pattern across the nation, same things happening to millions of people. And the amazing thing is people will find us and they'll say, I didn't know other people were out here that felt the same way I did. I thought I was crazy, or, all of that stuff. And so resources, somebody take a note that somebody at Betrayal Project USA, like me or something, take a note of these and get them on our website. So,
Can you go back to the slide before this one?
yeah, I can.
Okay. So one of the things that you can do afterwards is to put reviews on the facility's Facebook group and on Yelp. They don't like it. I recently had the person that was at the facility in Middle Georgia where my mom was murdered. I had put a Yelp review on there. It wasn't a real good one, but I didn't cuss in it, but it wasn't a good one. And I said, that they had murdered my mom and she wasn't safe there. And he wrote me, commented on that and said how sorry he was. And it sounded like I was still grieving and perhaps I should come and get some grief counseling from them. I'm like, yeah, right. And then I got an email from Yelp, and he had apparently gone to them and complained, and they said that the report that I put on there was quite negative, and would I consider rewriting it or removing it? That's a big no on both. So they don't like that, but I don't care. As long as you don't use bad language or put specific people's names there. And as Gail has said, tell your story on Betrayal Project USA. They do a beautiful job of honoring your loved one. It's very sweet. And Murder by Hospice group, please join us if you need support. We're there. You're not alone. And often watching somebody be murdered right in front of you, PTSD, it is real. You might need grief counseling. Join a support group for that. I believe that there is one in Betrayal Project USA. I believe they have one.
Thursday nights. Thursday nights, Patty Giuliano, Dr. Patty Giuliano does a trauma and PTSD support workshop every Thursday. So if you are in the, she does post it in the Betrayal Project USA private group. So like our group is a private group. So nobody else can see it except for members, and so we do post our support groups there. We have a Monday night, but you can check out our support groups on the website. But we always post it in there, and so it's a great. So tomorrow night there will be a PTSD trauma support group or workshop. It's more of a workshop support group, and she does. I've heard it's fantastic. Go ahead. Sorry.
So how can they find that, Gail?
So they can go on our website and put in a request for the information, and I'll send it to them. It's the same every week, or they can join the Betrayal Project USA private Facebook group. And typically, if I see that they're a member of your group or certain groups, please, we have questions, just 3 basic questions, but answer them. If you invite somebody, make sure they know that there's questions to answer. But typically, if I see that they're in your group, I just let them in.
Yeah, that's Murder by Hospice is like that too. We have questions because we are trying to keep out people that are going to come in and disparage our real members. And if hospice nurses come in and start speaking down to us or telling us that, we're wrong and we didn't witness what we witnessed, they get booted and banned. So you can always join our group. And if this is an important one too, sometimes people have been billed directly for the services and it's fraudulent double billing. And if that's true, report it to the OIG as fraud.
Yeah.
And if they send you a questionnaire about, how well did this hospice do, please fill it out and tell them what you think. Give them you can't give less than a 1, but explain that they didn't keep your loved ones safe. They don't like it, and they won't respond to you, but at least you've reported it. And Monday's program had some really good information, which Gail talked to you about earlier. So file that report also. And then resources. because that's important to know. Take a screenshot of it, or I guess Gail said she's going to put it out there,
Yeah,
so you can.
I will get
Yeah,
these
there's
in.
several different places that you can go to. Halo Voice is excellent to go
Mm-hmm.
to. Respect for Human Life is going to be Dr. Heidi Klesick, which you'll be hearing from her tomorrow. And Carol Herman is with Foundation Aiding the Elderly, and she is a bulldog, and she goes after in the nursing homes if there's something going on that shouldn't be, and it goes against policies and procedures. She doesn't back down, and she went after the hospice facility that my mom was in, and they didn't come out and say, what they had done. They deny everything, but at least there is a report on that, and that's important. I do not consent form, which um, Heidi Gail has talked about a
Laura
lot.
Bart, yeah, that's Laura Bartlett's. Mm-hmm.
Gail Bartlett, and so that's a really good place to go. And then there's two books: Killing for Profit: The Dark Side of Hospice. Michelle Young Doers was a hospice respiratory therapist who actually chose people over her profession and quit after the things that had been done. And she wrote the book, Killing for Profit: Dark Side of Hospice. It's available at Amazon. And Betrayed by Hospice and Healthcare: Stories from the Deathbed by Marcia Joyner. And it is also on Amazon.
Hey, I know her.
You do. And she can laugh sometimes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Even if she has typos. There we go. That is the picture. That's what the book looks like. So
Yeah.
knowledge truly is power, and I said it before, the life that you save could be your own. Get the book, get the book, get the book. Um so that was a lot of information. We know that it was a lot of
Yeah.
information, and we don't expect you to remember it all. There's not going to be a quiz, but there could end up being a real situation that is like a quiz. And I, Dr. David Martin, with regard to COVID, did say we do not have. It's like anything else. It's similar with this. You don't have a long time to get your PhD in this stuff because it's um, it's escalating. More and more people are being impacted by that. So I'm just going to show really quick. Um, if you don't mind, I'm going to share this tab instead. So get your loved one on the wall. It's pretty simple. This is the form. Get them on the wall. If you want to sit down on our podcast and tell your story, you can view the hospice stories are under other medical betrayal stories, protocol, and then we've got protocol stories and vaccine stories. You can watch the interviews we have out there. And then to share your story, it is very simple. You just pick the um, intake that you want, other institutional or medical betrayal intake, and you just fill it out. And then it'll ask you if you were in the hospital, if they were in a hospital, and it says you just put the name of the hospice facility or nursing home facility or what have you. The reason the county is optional, but the reason we ask for it is because we'd like to create some type of a statistical mapping. And you just go through, and it's going to ask you about medications and that type of thing, but it's very simple. You can add photos. I do want to make a note on the photos. Pictures of your loved one that depict them in better times is what we will put on the stories themselves. We ask for any documents of or pictures of abuse or files, that we can pull up during the interview, but we don't put those on the website because we don't want people coming and downloading them, right? And so you'll see Marsha's story is there, and right, and so there's some interviews there, interviews here. So you can go and watch some of the interviews, and you can really get a feel for the style in which we tell the story. Here's my story, my survivor story right here. My husband rescued me. Heidi Bond's friend. So, really you'll get a good, if you want to learn more about us, we're very transparent. We believe in transparency. You can learn about our board members, who we are. Right now we have a hospital deadly playbook that was from the protocols. We are putting together a hospice playbook that we will add. For Crime Week, we have these little Facebook frames that you're seeing around. Everybody's been asking, where do I get it? It's right here. We have to create them. So for a $5 donation, we'll create them. That helps us keep these stories up in the mission. And then also we have the crime scene, official crime t-shirts. Hospice is one of them. It says someone I love was killed by hospice protocols, and it's National Crime Victims. And Heidi Bond actually and her crew are at a march right now with their shirts on, and they did get a chance to talk to the media apparently. So that's pretty good. But we do have that official shirt that helps. We are going to put some other stuff on too. Right now we do have, most of our stuff is geared around protocols. We are working on survivor stuff, shot stuff, and hospice stuff to get out there. I love the ideas that people keep sending me. It's just a matter of, again, it's on my plate. The ideas and the designs have reached me. Thank you. And keep sending them. Keep sending them, because I love ideas. So, but it takes me a little bit to get that. If another thing, if y'all, I want to show you our resources section. So we are building this resource section so that you can come here and find whatever you need in here. And so we will be putting these down on the digital downloads. So you'll see right now, how to report a medical crime is in the digital downloads betrayal project. You've got the how to report a crime, and then the sample letters are already there. Okay. We've got flyers and everything, and we'll put a bunch of that stuff there, and I will get the list of websites. So recommendations, we have a recommendations tab, and I will put those websites in here. Some of them are here, but I will put the rest of them there. Recommended podcasts, books, documentaries. If you please email me some if you think that it's not full enough, right? So and Laura's I do not consent form.com, we link right to I do not consent form.com, because I want you to have the latest and greatest. Our social media is here. What else can I tell you? Contact us, get involved, our support groups, events, those types of things. Our Substack, we are writing these stories out there as crime things. We like to document what's latest in the news. So if you see something in the news you want us to put up here, please let me know. Yeah. So
do we have any questions, or
let's see.
I don't know if we did something separately.
We answered them, I think, pretty much as we went, which was good.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, if anybody has a question that they didn't ask, if they want to ask it before we.
Yeah, they can you got a
say
little bit of
goodnight.
time to put your questions in, but that was a very thorough presentation. I do want to say that please go and sign the proclamation. Again, it's on our website. This is very important. Um, and make sure you tune in tomorrow night for Dr. Classic is going to be talking about surviving brain death. And we're going to be talking to Jennifer Hammond, who is, this still gets me. She's a brain death survivor. I mean, just imagine, just imagine that. Like I always say, I feel like I escaped serial killers, but that's her experience is the it's incredible, and I can't wait to talk to her.
Yeah.
So, but they're going to be talking about the fallacy of brain death, and very important. And then on Friday, it's going to be about the Vax murders with Road Warriors Julie Threet and Ron Owens, and they are going to be talking about the fact that it's a bioweapon, but also how everyone is a victim and why everyone is a victim of what's occurred. And then, of course, Saturday is going to be Survivor Saturday and Second Chances. And Sunday is going to be closing ceremonies, and we are going to read the names. So please, please, please share this information. Keep sharing this information. We don't want to leave any victims behind when we read their names, and we'll take as long as we need to read their names. As many as I hope I have 500 names to read. Or 1,000. I'll read however many. We will read names until we have no voice, if that's what it takes. But we want to make sure that we honor everyone and don't leave anybody behind. So share it. Um, and I'm just going to give Heidi a shout out. There they are. There they are.
Yep, with their blue shirts on.
Yeah, they love, and they always Heidi every Sunday.
Where's Heidi?
She's taking the picture.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I don't see her there.
That's not even the whole crew, but that's when they got there. She goes and she holds signs every Friday outside of the hospital, or outside of the hospital. And then, gosh, Marsha, you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
I
wanted to see if Terry, did you want to come back on and say something? See if we can see you. We're seeing something, but it's not you.
Turn your camera around.
I don't know. I lost you. I don't know.
You want to say something?
Well, I just want to thank Gail for having me on, and of course you, Marsha, and the opportunity. And I think it's just important that people realize that we're not making this up, and we are telling the truth, because there are a lot of people that still don't believe us. My own family doesn't believe me, and it's 9 years. So don't give up. And thank you for letting me tell John's story. I appreciate it.
Well, I will say we're expecting you to come back on and do an entire segment on John with the pictures.
Yeah,
so
it's in my plan. It was a little rushed. I hope it was coherent, and I don't know when it cut off, so I don't know how far I got in it. But yes, that's in my plan, Marsha.
Okay, good. Thank you for coming on tonight and helping with all of this.
My pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Mick, you got any parting words? Or no? She's been replaced. Like right
no,
now.
we're good. We've just been listening. Great conversation. Really appreciated it.
All right, I'm going to close out with 2 little short clips, and we are going to then close it out. Thank y'all.